Hey everybody, today we got 8.50 and negative exponents. We're going to start by just quickly reviewing the two laws for zero exponent and a negative exponent. Should be fairly simple. My favorite law is actually the zero law because it's probably the easiest one. Remember, for every non-zero real number, a to the zero equals 1. So essentially anything to the zero is going to equal 1 as long as you're not taking 0 to the 0. So that's one of my favorites because it's probably the easiest. Then probably the most challenging is honestly the negative exponent. For every non-zero real number a and every integer n, a to the negative n equals 1 over a to the n. So you got to remember when we're dealing with negative exponents, and that's just to the exponent, it's not to the actual base, it's to the exponent, that it's going to move it to the denominator. And just for a side note, if you have a negative exponent in the denominator, it's simply just going to move it back up to the numerator. Okay, so while that's not the part of the law, it's a good kind of fact to know. So let's jump right in. We're going to do a whole bunch of problems, so follow along in your notes. And then you're going to have some practice, and we'll go over it again in class. Simplify each expression. Express the answer using only positive exponents. Assume that no variable has 0 as a value. So we got to make sure we're getting rid of them. So first thing we're going to do, a squared times a to the negative 2. Notice they have the same base. So if the bases are the same, we can actually just add the exponents, and you get a to the 0, which is just 1. It's kind of a gimme, right? So you'll notice as we go through some of these problems, we're going to have to do some of our older laws in addition to the two new ones. So if you take a look at b, we have the quantity of a to the 0, b to the negative 2, all that to the 5th, over 2a to the negative 1. So first thing I got to do is deal with this 5. Remember, it's going to go to both exponents. So we're going to have a to the 0, b to the negative 10th, over 2a to the negative 1. So a to the 0 is fantastic because that becomes 1, so we can essentially get rid of it. And now the tricky part. B to the negative 10th, since it's a negative exponent in the numerator, that b is going to go down. A to the negative 1, now be careful, it only goes to the variable. That coefficient of 2 is going to have to stay in the denominator. So a to the first is going up, 2 stays in the denominator, b to the 10th. All right, so you just have to be careful when it comes to coefficients because the exponent only goes to the variable or the base. All right, let's try a couple more. Ooh, look at this. So this one, really kind of nasty. And we really have to be careful because of this plus sign. Remember, I can't just distribute over the plus sign. That's how the puppies. Remember, we don't want to kill any puppies. So what we're going to have to do is we need to simplify inside first and then see what we can do. So first of all, well, y to the 0, that's going to go away. It's going to become 1. So we're really left with 3x squared plus 2x squared. So that's 5x squared over 10x squared. And we're taking all of that to the negative 2. Now that my numerator and denominator are simply factors, I could distribute the negative 2, but I honestly think it's a little bit easier to just keep simplifying. So notice the x squareds are going to cancel, and I'm left with 1/2 to the negative 2, because 5 over 10 reduces. Now, since it's a negative exponent, and it's a fraction, this is one of our other laws, we could flip the entire fraction. So it's now 2 squared, which is 4. Again, I think it's easier in this case to kind of simplify before we actually start using the negative exponent. All right, let's go to the next one. A to the 0, b to the negative 3, c squared, d to the negative 1, all over the quantity ac to the negative 2, b to the negative 5, d to the 0. Again, notice I have a quantity here with factors and the exponent, so that is the power of a product. I can distribute it to both, so I got to do that. I also have a couple of zeros here, so I'm just going to get rid of them. Don't even want to deal with it. So let's rewrite it. B to the negative 3, c squared, d to the negative 1, all over. This is a to the negative 2, c to the negative 2, b to the negative 5. Now, anything that has a negative exponent is going to move. So they're either going to go up or down. So we can either do the subtraction or we can move them. That's kind of up to you. I'll kind of show you two different techniques here. One technique is just moving them. So like b to the -3 is going to come down. D to the -1 is going to come down. So just moving. So we'll come this way. And this is just the moving technique. So if we move everything, c squared stays up there. A squared's coming up. C squared's coming up. B to the 5th's coming up. And then if we look at our next one, we've got nothing stayed down, but b to the 3rd's coming down and d to the 1st coming down. Now, once we move stuff, now we can simplify. So if you notice, nothing's going to simplify with a, so a squared stays there. B to the 5th and b to the 3rd, so these are going to cancel, give me 2 up here, so b squared. And then c squared and c squared, c to the 4th, all over d. All right, so we can move them up and down and then start canceling them. The other technique is to just use your laws. So in other words, do your subtraction of your exponents without actually moving anything. So if we do it that way, you'll notice it's similar, but it takes a little more thinking. I've got c squared and I have a -2, so that's really 2 minus -2, which means plus, so that's how we get c to the 4th up top. Your a squared is just the a squared, so it's still coming up top. B to the -3 and b to the -5. So remember, it's a fraction. You subtract -3 minus -5, which means b squared, and then d still moves down there. So you can still use the subtraction technique that we've done in all the previous problems. You're just kind of doing it in your head. Honestly, whatever works better for you, I would have at it. All right, so now we're on E. -3j to the -2, k to the -1. So again, we're just trying to demonstrate, remember, these exponents only go to the base. They do not go to the coefficient. So that -3 stays up top, but the j squared and the k to the 1st go down, and that's all it is. So that one's kind of simple, but it's trying to show you again that coefficient gets left alone. All right, so now F. R to the -3, s squared, t to the -5 over r to the 0, s to the -1, t to the -7. So right away, I'm crossing out r to the 0. I know it's going to be 1. I'm just going to get rid of it. All right, so I kind of like doing the subtraction part in my head. And I kind of look at these and I say, okay, the 7's going to go up. So, and the r is going to go down. The s's, I got them both places. So we're going to kind of go r first. So alphabetically, r to the cube's going down. And then we got s squared and s to the -1. So since this negative, it's going up. So it's going to join the squared and give me 3. And then this is what I mean about the reversal. This is going up and this is coming down, but they're going to cancel. And in the top, I'm going to have more. So I'm going to have t squared. So if you notice when I do it, I'm kind of doing a hybrid of the moving and the subtracting and trying to keep track of it all in my head. Ultimately, that's where we want to end up. Ultimately, we want to be doing as little work as we can so that we're just getting the answer as quickly as we can. All right, so G and H. And don't worry, we only have a few more. We're only going to do 4 more because we're not going to make this too long. G and H gets a little weird. And usually what I say is if I have negatives on the inside exponents and negatives on the outside, I'm usually going to distribute if I can right away. And the reason for that is if I flip these, this is going down, this is coming up, and then I distribute, I'm just going to end up moving it back down and moving it back up. So you end up doing everything twice. And so I think it's a lot easier when you have negative exponents inside and outside, just distribute them right away. Then you're not flipping once and then flipping twice. So if I distribute right away, this is -1 times -2 is 2. And this becomes -2. Well, -2 times -2 is 4. Notice I don't have to flip anything now. Because of the way we have negatives inside and out, you just distribute, they turn them positive, then you don't have to worry about it. So 3 squared is 9, -2 to the 4th. Remember, a negative to an even power is going to be positive. We get 9/16. So now let's look at H. H takes it kind of to an extreme. Notice all factors, but I got negatives. So and on the outside. So I'm going to distribute this, and I'm going to multiply. these exponents. So this 3 to the negative 3 now becomes 3 to the 6th. U becomes u to the negative 4. W to the 10th. All over 6 squared, u to the 2nd, w to the 4th. All right, so kind of ugly, but I think we can handle it. 3 to the 6, you're going to want to grab a calculator. So 3 to the 6, don't worry, I got you though. It's 729. And we're going to do the 2 squared right away. It's 36. All right, so now let's work on these variables. So let's go with u first. I got u squared down low, and these 4 are going down because it's got a negative. So I'm going to have u to the 6th. And then these w to the 4th are going to cancel with 10 of them, or excuse me, with the 10 up here giving me 6. So I got w to the 6th because it's just a subtraction, 10 minus 4. Now the problem's reducing 729 over 36. Honestly, I would use my calculator, type it in as a fraction, and then reduce it. You actually get 81 over 4. So it's 81 w to the 6th over 4 u to the 6th. Cool. All right. So we got 2 more. They're kind of gross, but I think we can handle them. And then we're going to kind of call it a day for today. All right. So in A, it says simplify each expression, express the answer so that no denominator contains a variable. All right. So same thing we've been doing, just notice a little bit uglier. As soon as I see an r to the 0, I'm just getting rid of it. So let's go alphabetical. There's only an r to the negative 3, so that's going down. I got s squared and s to the negative 4. So these 4 have to go up, but I already have 2 up there, so s to the 6th. The t's are going to flip-flop, so the 5 is going to be in the top. And here, we'll show it this time. I got t to the 5th and t to the 4th. So if I show that, these 4 now cancel, and I get s to the 6th t over r to the 3rd. That's what I mean by I'm doing it in my head, okay? Except, now I didn't read the directions, so this one's on me, guys. It says don't want to do that. It says express the answer so that no denominator contains a variable, which kind of goes against what we've been doing, which is a little annoying, and I forgot these problems are here, so I'm sorry. I can't have that r cubed in the denominator, so in other words, we got to bring it back up. We're going to make it r to the negative 3, s to the 6th t. Now, are we going to do that very often? No, honestly, we're not. But because the directions say that this time, we have to make sure that we leave all the denominators out, and we're going to write it with a negative exponent. But 95% of the time, we don't want to have a negative exponent, okay? So good thing I caught that and read the directions a little bit. Hopefully you don't make the same mistake I did. All right, last problem. Notice I got negatives everywhere, so I'm just going to distribute right away. So I got t squared, I got a to the 2nd, b to the negative 4, c to the 6th over. I got 6 to the negative 2, a to the negative 6, b to the 3rd, c to the negative 6. Okay, so now with the directions in mind, I got to be a little careful here because essentially I want to bring everything upstairs because I don't want any variables in the denominator. So to move things upstairs, like 2 squared is just 4. This is coming up, and 6 squared is going to be 36. All right, I already have an a squared, and this is coming up, so I've got a to the 8th. And this is where I got to be careful because I don't want this left down here, so I'm going to bring it up. But to move it, I got to change its sign. So instead of being b to the 3rd, it's now going to become b to the negative 3, and I already have negative 4 up there, so it's b to the negative 7. These are coming up, so the sign changes. I get c to the 12th. All I have to do is multiply. 4 times 36 is 144. So we get a to the 8th, b to the negative 7th, c to the 12th. Now, again, normally, we don't like having the negative exponent, but that's just the directions are trying to make sure you know what you're doing, and so that's why we left them there. You'll notice there are some more problems on the notes. We're going to hold off on these. We'll talk about these the next day, so don't worry about them. But now go take a look at the homework and start working on some of these negative exponent rules. And I'll see you soon.